Hi everyone, it's Nikki and I'm here today with lots of masculine cards. We're going to look at ways to use your embossing powders for more than just stamping a sentiment. I've got lots of different ways that we can use them today. We'll make lots of cards and it's going to be a great video. So I won't go into extreme detail of each card, but I'm going to show you the embossing techniques that I used with all of them. So let's get started. So for the first card, I'm starting with a piece of just copy paper. You could put this on a sticky mat or something like that. And then I'm using smooth white cardstock. And I'm taking my embossing ink pad and I'm swiping across this and getting a nice layer of embossing ink on this white paper. So we're going to start with creating a background so that we don't have to color, but to add lots of texture and glittery stuff to our background. So here we go. So for the first background, and this is one of my favorite cards that I made with this, I'm using the citrus quad that just came out. So it's 4 colors that coordinate with each other. They have some chunky glitter to them and just a lot of depth, which makes it a really interesting background. So we're going to do one color. I go ahead and put all the powder on it before I heat it. So I'm starting with the red and then I'm going to go to orange. So you can do this where you go ahead and heat and then add more ink and do your next color. But to me, it just seems easier to kind of lay all the colors down at once and then heat it up. So when you're using this wonderful glittery, chunky embossing powder, you want to start by heating the back of the paper because if you take that air and you blow on the front, you're going to blow the heaviest parts off, which are usually the chunks of glitter and the extra stuff in the embossing powder. So you can completely emboss from the back or you can get it mostly done and then come in the front and make sure that everything's already kind of stuck and just finish it off. And look how gorgeous this is. It turned out so beautiful. But I want to tell you, when you're doing a panel, sometimes you realize you need a little bit more of something on the panel once it's already heated. You could use your mixed media brush like this, or you could take your ink pad and go back over. So everything's already dry. So if you're wanting to add a little bit more, you could use either of those two options. I usually elect, if I'm going to do a pretty large section, I go ahead and use my embossing pad. I wanted to add just a little bit more on this red section. So you see that I'm going back in and then I'll dip it back in the powder, heat it up again and have a little bit better coverage. And sometimes you need that, especially if you accidentally blow all the glitter parts off or something, you used your heat tool kind of incorrectly, then you've always got options once it's dry to keep adding to it. So if you're going to cut your panel, you do need to give it a little bit of time. Make sure that that embossing is completely cooled down because you will get pieces of that embossing sticking to your die if you don't. Now to highlight this panel, I grabbed some colors and just kind of made them match. I will definitely put that in the description if you've got this citrus quad, but it can work with whatever colors you're using. Just kind of coordinate the background, and I'm using this stencil from Wow. I'm doing this really quick and just laying down the same colors so that it's gonna like kind of highlight that panel. So let me show you the final card in this final stencil reveal, and I think you're gonna see why you need to start using embossed panels on your card. They just give it so much fun and so much texture. Now I'm going to jump to the assembly. I did this as a masculine card because I have teenagers that are boys and they love cards that say like dude, happy birthday or bro, happy birthday. So we're going to go with dude. I'm using a T ruler just to get everything lined up, but let me show you up close how awesome this card looks and then we'll do some more examples and some more tips and tricks on things to use your embossing powder for. And look at all this dimension and texture. It looks so good. So let me show you one other quick way to do a panel. So you can also create a panel and just apply the embossing ink to a certain portion of your card. With this card, I'm just going down the middle and leaving the sides not embossed. And then I'm going to tear some paper and you'll see it's just a very simple yet effective and cool looking card. So this one, I kept it to the building block quads, which I really only use 3 of the colors, but these are more neutrals. So I'm going to show you how you can create an amazing masculine card just with neutrals as well. And you see that I've heat embossed this. It's the middle of the paper. Let me show you what we're going to add and finish this card super fast. So I am just tearing just to create a more rugged look. So I'm just tearing some paper and it's just my plain white cardstock. And then I'm going to put those torn pieces where it covers up the edges of that embossing. I'm going to grab some really bold letters and put a cute sentiment on here, and I'll show you what it looks like. So I added big letters and then I added the small happy birthday sentiment, and here's what it looks like. It just gives it a lot of texture and kind of rugged look. I love it. Okay, so our next way to use embossing powder is to create letters. I'm going to create some chunky letters and I'm going to create some specific embellishments. So if you don't have any embellishments and you want to make your own, I'm going to show you how to do that. We're going to start with this tool. It's called the Mixed Media Brush, and it's embossing liquid with like a fingernail polish top is kind of what it's like. This is the easiest way to apply a good amount of embossing ink on small things. So I'm going to use it to paint on these letters. The reason that I showed you in the picture 3 sets of these letters is because I went on and glued the 3 sets together. So this is 3 layers of paper. It just tends to make it a little bit more sturdy and easier when you're heat embossing. Now, since your powder is wet, I'm trying to be real careful with my pickups, and I end up just kind of holding this from one side. So just be careful, don't burn your fingers. But I'm going to hold it from one side and heat up an edge, let it cool down, and then grab it with my tweezers. Now, yes, you could probably accomplish the same thing just by cutting these letters out of an embossed panel, but I've noticed that sometimes the embossing powder will stick to the die, and if I'm wanting that really chunky, thick look, I do better by actually doing the letter versus trying to cut it out of a panel. Now, here's the trick to lots of dimension and extra chunky results. I've let this one dry, and now I'm going to do one more layer. So I call this double heat embossing. So I'm going to add another layer of embossing powder on top of this, and it just really gives that chunky, so much texture to your letters. It looks so good. So I'm not going to show you all the other letters. I'll briefly show you the colors. I'm using the citrus quad, so I'm using 4 different colors, and we're making the word dude. So it has 4 letters, which equals these colors. So I just did 1 letter in each of these color, and once again, I double embossed each one of them. Now, as I started to put this card together, I felt like it was a little too plain and I needed some type of embellishments. I have my swatches right here and I have this crocodile punch. It's called a multi-hole punch. I will make sure to link it in the description for you. So I decided to just cut out some pieces of in different size circles from my little swatch, and then I'm going to glue them down like they were just meant to be there and like they were made by somebody else. So I'm going to add a few dots to this just to make it a little bit cooler. So I went to a smaller size in the hole punch, and then I cut out, and they are teeny tiny, so you do have to kind of like shake it out of the hole puncher, but I cut out a very small green and a very small yellow to also add to that. So just be careful with those little pieces, but it's so nice to make your own embellishments with embossing powder. This is the easiest way I found to get it out was to use my tweezers and reach in and grab that little piece. But this would it'd probably be a great idea to like put these on a piece of sticky tape just to help you hold on to them on your desk because they are very small. So this is the first version of this card. And when I looked at it, if my letters had been bigger, I think it may have worked fine. But I decided that I wanted a little bit more color. So I put like a color matching thing behind it, and it really gives it a different look. But I did use those homemade embellishments, and they look so cute. For our last card, I wanted to create a geometric card. And I thought about just stamping this with colors and then maybe just adding some accents with embossing. But as I thought about it, I was like, I'm just going to use embossing powder as like in place of stamping ink, basically. I'm going to stamp with a clear ink and then I'm going to use the embossing powder and layer these over each other to make a cool geometric card. I know that I want to kind of create a triangle shape with this card, and this card ends up turning out really quite interesting. I'll have to show you at the end. But I'm going to use clear and I'm going to create this cool pattern. I started out with a piece of paper and I added the powder because we know we're going to be embossing this. I lined up my first triangle and I used that yellow tape over to the side to kind of keep me in a triangle formation, just to kind of stamp up along those. And that is going to really make the difference in this card. With this intricate of a design, I know that I'm going to go ahead and heat emboss each of the triangles separately. So I'm using that piece of tape at the top of the stamp wheel, as you can see the blue and yellow, to be able to line my card up easily in the same place. So depending on what you're stamping on, just so you know exactly where it was before, it will really help you to keep that lined up and keep your geometric card going if you've got yourself a marker. So we're going to start with this one. I'm going to go ahead and emboss it. I am cleaning off any extra, and we're using the building blocks again, which this one is kind of a brown color. And let me show what I mean. See how I can line that up so easily, and then I can put my piece of tape that I've got over here right back where it was because it's still stuck to that pad. So then I can keep everything lined up, and this makes such a huge difference in geometric cards. That's my biggest advice on geometric cards, is to make sure that your lines are straight. I'm just adding a rotating set of colors. I'm going to use the same 3 colors that I used on the hay card. It's going to be a brown, kind of like a light gray, and a black. And now, once you get your pattern established, you really can go in and, if with a stamping platform, add a lot more stamps at a time to make this quicker. So with the next one, I did several because now I'm up to the color black, and I knew I wanted several pieces to be black so I could do all those at the same time, which was really nice. So once I finish all my triangles, all I need to do is put on my sentiment, and I'm going to fit it right here. And my original intention for this card was to keep it horizontal like this. But then I realized that this card, because it is geometric, you can flip it 2 ways. So tell me in the comments which one you prefer, horizontal or vertical. All right, so let's review. We did letters, chunky letters with our embossing powder. We did embellishments. We cut these out with hole punchers. We did panels of embossing. Instead of doing ink blending, we're using that nice glittery embossing to create the panel behind the dude and this panel behind hay. So many fun ideas. I hope you enjoyed it. Make sure you hit the like and subscribe, and all of the products will be listed in the description. Hope to see you again soon. Have a great day. Bye.